Chargers passing game versus the Cowboys pass defense here, because this should be a very exploitable matchup for Justin Herbert, for the Chargers wide receivers. And yet, my God, it has been painful to watch this team for a long time now, but the last 2 weeks it's been brutal. I can't believe that Justin Herbert took more hits in this game against Kansas City than he took against the Eagles the week prior, because he was getting blasted left and right against the Eagles. And yet it is true, he took more hits in the game against Kansas City than he did against the Eagles the week prior. No Quinton Johnson in this game, so we got to get a look at like Keandre Lambert-Smith and Trey Harris, which I thought both those guys flashed in that game. But still, it just also kind of makes the whole passing game spread out, which is tough, obviously, for Ladd McConkey, who's not gotten the targets that you want from him. He's not a player that I think you can auto start. Keenan Allen also doesn't see any bump and roll. He's just kind of a slot only, matriculate the ball down the field on third down, stuff like that. But again, this is a very exploitable pass defense, Nate. So where are we at with this Chargers passing game that is going to project well against Dallas? But I just have no faith that I can see a good performance out of this passing game that lifts up multiple boats here. Do you have any different take in this particular game?
I wish I could tell you, because it's just a movable force, against a stoppable object, especially with the fronts, because now Quinyon Williams is hurt. That change. If he was playing, then I'd actually be like, wow, the Cowboys have allowed the most EPA to receiver targets this entire year. They've allowed 119.14 EPA to receiver targets this year. The league average is 51.8. So over double the league average. So that's where I would just be like, oh yeah, pay receiver, they're going to go bonanza. Yeah, they're going to go nuts. But they're going to get pressure, because just you got to think of the strength of the Cowboys defense, like Osoda Gazua, like an interior pressure. But I also just think that Herbert can get the ball out quickly enough, and also because they kind of know that and how they like to play a lot. It's a lot more simple zone. This is the stuff that Herbert kind of shreds. So I actually think in this matchup, it's actually a good matchup, even if their O-line is weak. It's just kind of one of those things. It's hard to predict, because I think the Chargers you can kind of have your way against this Cowboys defense. Like the run game, well, at least they were stifling a little bit, but then even the Vikings were kind of moving them when Quinyon was out there, because the linebackers are just iffy and just so bad, because that's where, Gadsden becomes viable. But I just think this is kind of still an all systems go, like still a juicy matchup, because I just don't think it's that there's not that one dude I'm too worried about. If you're going against say just Micah Parsons was on this defense right now, a healthy Micah Parsons, then I'd be like, oh, okay, well, he's going to wreck your game. That I don't see how they're going to block that up. But, as much as, they have some edge juice, but I don't think it's overwhelming enough to totally take away the game from the Chargers having some offense on this. And everybody's be able to get this defense. And I think the Chargers are going to be accepted from that.
And, it certainly would benefit a guy like McConkey, that quicker game stuff. We've seen that in the past. It's just really tough to trust right now. But your notes on like the most EPA allowed to wide receivers is certainly helpful, and it's instructive here. And I think Herbert's a guy that I do have a Herbert team that I'm personally struggling with, like what to do with him versus CJ Stroud, who I picked up off the waiver wire and stuff like that, like him versus the Raiders. So those are the things I'm definitely personally stressing about. For the most part, I think those are the only two guys you're kind of worried about. I think if you're playing anybody other than Ladd McConkey in the receiver room, you're getting too cute about it. I think Arande Gadsden, like there are better options at tight end, but it really comes down to, can you rank Herbert as a top 12 quarterback? I don't think so, but I think you can rank him as a high-end QB2, and then if you don't have a better option, you can go with him. And then McConkey, I'll still probably have in this very same range of guys like Jalen Waddle, guys like Jamison Williams, where you're counting on those big plays, the big in-breaking routes, big out-breaking routes, the sail routes off play action and stuff that Ladd McConkey's really good at. That I just account you're counting on a couple of those hitting here for him to get home for you, because otherwise, like we've seen that the floor is very, very low when the offensive line for that team just gets completely dominated.
Maybe it's wishful thinking, but I think Ladd is the guy that'll benefit the most, because I think it's the outside corner play. You can really attack this defense.
Oh yeah.
Ladd does both for them. Keenan Allen's primarily a slot and a third down guy. And then, Quinton Johnson, it's more just movement stuff. stuff that works over the middle. And I think that I almost think of him as more, it's so he's his own thing. He's just like his usage that he's the type of guy that's just like kind of like, okay, designer plays, I think maybe is the best way to put it. So I think maybe the flow of the offense, I could see like a lot of curl routes, like a lot of those like 15, 16 yarders where he's working from the outside and coming back. Like I think I see a lot of those soft spots, like deep outbreakers and stuff. I think it's more of a Ladd game than any of the other receivers too. So I'm trying to almost talk you on the ledge a little bit if you are just a Ladd.
I'm really off.
I know. I can see that. Yeah. So I'm trying to like kind of go like, yeah, like actually it's not too bad. I don't know. I'm trying to talk you into it a little bit because I don't know. This Cowboys defense is just atrocious. I was feeling a little bit better about some parts of it, but it's like it's just because it's so simplistic on the back end. Yeah. So they don't have talent, and on top of it, you know what you're getting, and now you're going against the Terminator, Herbert, who is extremely smart, and if you're not funking it up on him, he's just going to and get the ball out. So who cares about the O-line stuff? Yeah. So that's kind of where I just think it's one of those where it's like it's good enough against this type of defense.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay, that doesn't make me feel a little bit better.
I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I have no Ladd stock in this week, so
me neither. It's mostly a Herbert question for me, but I think Ladd needs to happen for Herbert to happen, so that's why it's like kind of stressful for me. So yeah, no, that's good to hear. Let's get to your second one here because this is one you teased earlier: yeah. Scary Terry versus Quinyon Mitchell here.
This is just Marcus Mariota has been a pretty solid performer, when he's been the quarterback now for Washington. Like the offense has been able to stay somewhat on track. I keep hyping up the run game. Rodriguez gets hurt, and then freaking Bill gets back in there and has a big week. I'm just like, but I saw the run game has been steady. But Scary Terry has just been still a nice tight window performer. It just helps the offense because he's an easy button type of receiver, a guy that can win vertically and can win on contested catches. But he's going against, I would just picture how the Eagles defense, which the Eagles have to be, game, like they're not trying to give any of these away. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell have been all pro level players. Cooper DeJean plays primarily in the slot, which Debo, kind of, even though Debo's been doing more than that. But I think Quinyon Mitchell's been a first team all pro corner this year. Whether you look at yards, whether you look at completion percentage, whether you look at eye test, success rate, all these stats point to him being on the podium for one of the best corners this year. And it's just confirmed. And how they play is they will allow him to travel with the first receiver, which is clearly Terry in this type of offense. So it's attack vertically. So he's one, because I know Scary Terry is not going to be like your receiver one or anything of that sort. But a guy that if you have decisions, I would fade him this week because it's not the best matchup. I would prefer the run game against the Eagles. And I would prefer the Commanders' run game against the Eagles as opposed to one of the receivers as a guy that I would really kind of like hang my hat on this week.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Like you've already kind of seen that the last couple weeks where Terry McLaurin against this Giants team, because he is it's more of the single high coverage man stuff on the outside. He's going to have that big play as he did against the Giants last week where he has the long touchdown catch. But then the game against the Vikings, not as much, right? Where he has the slower game there because that's just less of the type of stylistic defense that Terry McLaurin typically pops off.
It's all cover two stuff. So it's that cover two takes away vertical receivers. So like that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, 6 targets, 3 catches, 41 yards, no touchdowns, and then the next game, 4 targets, 3 catches, 69 yards, the touchdown. So really, it's with Terry. Is he going to make that big play or not? The game against Denver obviously is the outlier. He has the 14 targets, despite playing a part-time role, and he was just taking it to Patrick Surtain. Which maybe if you want to tell yourself the story here, that Quinyon, he gets got here, but
to that first team All Pro. Let's take on this year's first team All Pro.
But Surtain was coming back from like a pec injury, probably came back pretty early from it. You never know with all that. So I definitely think I'm with you there that with Terry, he's very he might be more boom bust than any of the guys we've talked about here so far. Where the other thing that's worth noting though is that if Terry gets any work against any of the other outside corners, particularly when they've used opponents have used play action, they've really been able to sting those perimeter corners, not named Quinyon Mitchell, on play action dropbacks. And Marcus Mariota actually has a higher play action rate than Jaden Daniels does this year. So they kind of use more of that with Marcus Mariota. So that would be your one hope, that path to that big play. Because I agree, right now I'd give that edge in the matchup to Quinyon Mitchell there. So that's definitely one to watch. I'm going to stick in the NFC East for my next one here. Cowboys wide receivers versus the Chargers defensive backs, specifically George Pickens. George Pickens is kind of reverted back to the old, boom bust version of George Pickens. There's been the talk about the effort and all that. I will say, watching the Vikings game back, I didn't see him like loafing around or any of that stuff out there. I don't think that was the cause of it. The thing for me that I did see, though, was a lot of plays where they just zoned it up on that side of the field to George Pickens. They throw an extra, kind of umbrella coverage on that side of it. It's like they drop a cornerback, they have a flat defender there, and because Pickens, and this happens a lot with these guys who are just static X receivers, and he is a great static X receiver, but when you can chaos up the game plan and you're going to throw a lot of those zones out there, you can just get stuck and you can get out of the game plan. And that felt a lot of what happened with George Pickens in that game last week to me. And I just wonder if we're going to see the exact same thing this week, because the Chargers are, I think, one of, if not the best defense in zone coverage this season. Their defensive backs are awesome. They allow the fewest points per drop back from a fantasy standpoint in zone coverage, according to Fantasy Points data. And when you just look at George Pickens, I did this split by the games where CeeDee Lamb played. So weeks 1, 2, and then 7 to 15 against man coverage, George Pickens 2.9, which is a great number. Weeks 3 to 6 without CeeDee Lamb, 3.75. So both like awesome numbers. Now, George Pickens yards per route run versus zone coverage, again, weeks 1, 2, and then 7 to 15. So this is mostly with CeeDee Lamb, 1.85. Not terrible, but it's fine. Weeks 3 to 6, 3.01. Like high end stuff. Anything over 3 is awesome, obviously. So I would say that the takeaway there is he is more vulnerable to losing production versus zone coverage when CeeDee Lamb is on the field, which makes sense, right? Because he's the slot flanker. He's going to get the layup targets, everything like that. So to me, I think that's the biggest issue for George in this game is you're going to see a ton of zone. He's that static X receiver. CeeDee Lamb's doing all the fun move around stuff. And especially with the Cowboys offensive line that is dealing with injuries, we'll see who's out there on Sunday for this team, but they have been dealing with injuries previously. If they can get taken to work up front, you're going to see Dak in chaos again. And guess what? Like when your quarterback is in chaos, it's the Cortland Sutton Bo Nix thing. When your quarterback's in chaos, that X receiver is not going to get a bunch of targets against zone coverage.
And also, it's not even just the zone coverage, it's the types of zones they get. Because you just mentioned George Pickens is one of the true X's in the NFL. How high or low you rank him is just up to everybody. But one of the guys that gets treated like a true X because he can beat just about anybody one-on-one vertically. He can win on. He's one of the true guys that can win on stop routes, etc. I just mentioned in the last segment, cover 2 and cover 6, which are called cloud coverages. Those are the ones, they feature cover 2 at least on one side. That's a way you take away a true X. And the Cowboys are the offense is a merger of Schottenheimer stuff, some Clayton Adams run game stuff, and then what Dak likes, especially some of the formations they use. Well, we use George Pickens as an X. All right, well, if you're going to be in what they call 3x1 trip sets, okay, we'll just run cover 2, cloud to that side. The two teams that have faced the most cloud coverages this year are the Bengals and the Cowboys. So the Bengals have faced 200 dropbacks with cover 2 or cover 6, and the Cowboys have faced 160 dropbacks with cover 2 or cover 6. Makes sense, right? Probably the best duos in the game when they're all out there. I'm sure it's even more when they're both on the field, but I'm just kind of looking, just eyeballing this. And then if you look, the Cowboys against when just their target share against cover 2 and cover 6, this is true media, CeeDee Lamb, highest target share. And then usually the tight end is the guy that feasts against cover 2 and cover 6. Guess who's second? Jake Ferguson. So, and guess who's third? Usually the other guy because it's over the middle. So we mentioned a slot, a tight end, the running back. Third, Javonte Williams are the 3 leaders in target share against cover 2 and cover 6. And this is a perfect stat that matches exactly football philosophy and scheme. This is just perfect. I didn't know this going in, so it's kind of fun for me to share this. But it's George Pickens against cover 2, cover 6, 15% target share, 14.9%. He 1.17 yards per route. CeeDee Lamb, 3 yards per route against cover 2, cover 6, 27% target share. So exactly what you were saying, but it's respect. but they have the guys that can eat it, that can beat it, Dak, Jake Ferguson, CD. So they're just not going to try and do anything else. Well, okay, we'll just do this instead. Like it's good offense, but it's frustrating if you're a George Pickens owner. I understand. But totally. Going against the Chargers, you probably see more of it this week because that's what they do as well. So it's hard for this week.
No, that was awesome because that kind of confirms a little bit of what I think about some of the coverage data sometimes is as opposed to, especially when you get granular into like cover 2 versus cover 3, cover 4, all that, like you're breaking out specific players. It almost matters more like what's your role on the team. Like you could basically throw that analysis out there without anybody's name on it. And I think it would make complete sense. It just so happens that this Cowboys team, because Pickens is such a pure X receiver where he's just almost outside on the line and he's way out there sometimes, it makes it dramatic, like these splits and everything. So that makes complete sense to me. And yeah, it definitely makes Pickens a guy that is, again, the same line that we're saying here, boom bust this week. I mean, and like, because we're throwing out so many names that people have to start, like you're going to start almost all of these guys we're talking about here.
The show is basically the cold water show. It's basically, hey, sorry to scare you guys show, but this is kind of what I've been looking at all week too.
Ray Garvin and I call it, we're fear mongering, which we are. Doesn't pay the bill. It doesn't pay the bills on YouTube or podcasts. That actually, we should do that on X. We should do it on Twitter over there. That's where if you fear monger over there, that's where you get, you pay the bills. But so I just think the thing is, like, these guys are also going to project pretty well. And I think for Pickens, the saving grace here is that I do think this game could be high scoring. And in that case, like, he's going to have a shot at a touchdown here, or something like that. So again, I'm not going to bench George Pickens for, Jaden Reed or something like that. It's just, again, he's still a starter, but you've just got to be ready to be like, all right, if he's volatile here, or Jalen Waddle's volatile here, James Williams volatile here, what am I doing, to kind of make up for that?